Hey guys, and welcome to the LPIC 2 course here on CBT Nuggets. So before we begin actually digging into the details of what we actually have to learn for this examination, let's just briefly take a word about the exam itself. Now, the first thing to state about this examination is that you will have heard of the LPIC 1 examination if you are interested in taking the LPIC 2 exam, no doubt. That is because the LPIC 2 actually builds upon the LPIC 1 exam. Pretty much what you learn in LPIC 1 is a more foundational level of information, and then you take that information and build upon it on LPIC 2. Now, the LPIC 2 examination ultimately attempts to validate the candidate's ability to administer small to medium networks. Now, when you're getting to administer medium-sized networks, for example, you really do have to be fairly comfortable with the Linux system. Now, one thing to note about the LPIC 2 examination is that any candidates seeking to take this exam must actually have an LPIC 1 certification and an active certification. So that means that your LPIC 1 certification cannot be expired. I do believe the validity period for the LPIC 1 certification is 5 years. So within 5 years of passing the LPIC 1 exam, you will be able to take the LPIC 2 exam. Now, another thing to note is that just like with the LPIC 1 exam, the LPIC 2 certification actually is comprised of two separate exams. The first exam is known as the 201 exam, and the second exam, this is the 202 exam. Now, as it transpires, what you can do is take these examinations completely separately, so you could just focus on the content of the 201 exam, pass that, and then focus your attention on the 202. This is often the recommended way to undertake the LPIC 2 examination. And just like with the LPIC 1 examination, when you happen to pass your LPIC 2 exam, you will have this certification valid for 5 years. Unless, of course, you happen to gain an even higher level of certification, say for example an LPIC 3 exam. Now, one thing to really note about the LPIC 2 examination is that there is going to be such a common theme with the contents of what you learned within LPIC 1. Like I say, it does heavily build upon that knowledge. That means that you can expect to see many of the same tools that you've used within LPIC 1 again revisited in LPIC 2, and very often actually expanded upon, i.e. we dig a little bit deeper into these tools. But as a high level overview, some of the things that you should be expected to be able to do when you go to sit the LPIC 2 certification exam is that you should be able to perform fairly advanced system administration tasks. And this would be things like relating to the actual Linux kernel, as well as the system startup and its maintenance. Now, not only that, you should also be able to perform fairly advanced networking and authentication, as well as, by the way, being able to handle and manage particular security features such as dealing with firewalls or virtual private networks, otherwise known as VPNs. Now, with respect to talking about networking, some of the things that you can expect to be able to have to know for this examination is being able to be comfortable with configuring things like DHCP. This is the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Now, again, if you happen to be a little bit hazy on this from what you learned in the LPIC 1 examination, do not worry, we'll get to cover the concepts once again and, like I say, dive a little bit deeper. But we'll get to see things like DHCP, like I say, as well as DNS, which is Domain Name System, which we use to resolve our domain names to particular IP addresses, as well as dealing with things such as Secure Shell for secure encrypted remote management of servers, as well as dealing with things like web servers and file servers, using things such as FTP, the File Transfer Protocol, as well as dealing with email delivery and things such as Samba. And as always with Linux, we also want to dip our toe into a little bit of automated management, things like being able to use scripting to help us manage our systems. So really what I'm saying is that the LPIC 2 examination really is a fun one. There's a lot of things to dig into, and if you have recently passed the LPIC 1 examination, so much of what we're going to cover should be fresh in your head, and that will make it much easier for you to take that fresh knowledge and build upon it within this course in LPIC 2. But like I say, if you happen to be a little bit rusty on that information, do not worry, we will absolutely cover all the essentials and core fundamentals we are bringing along with us from the LPIC 1 and make sure we are definitely up to speed and where we need to be. So that really is our little introduction into the LPIC 2 certification exam. How about now we actually dig in to some of the details of what we have to know. The first subject I want to talk to you about is all about monitoring CPU and memory utilization. And well, that is what we're going to be covering in the very next nuggets. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.